Okay, so I'm back. So we're going to be talking about Donald Trump downplaying the lives lost in the Iran war. And he gets called out by the loved ones of those lost in the Iran war. Let's get into it. Anthony Black, Radio. Like, share, comment, and subscribe. All right.
Thousands of soldiers in these various wars. In two wars, Venezuela, where we lost nobody, and here, we lost 13 people. Now, 13 people is 13 too much, but we lost 13 people. In other wars, you lost hundreds of thousands of people. So, people don't like it when you say, oh, do you know you've lost 13? We lost in two major wars. We took over Venezuela. We essentially took over Iran. And we've lost so far 13 people. Some other...
You didn't take over Iran. Iran is destroying U.S. soldiers.
Somebody else would have lost 100,000 people. Okay? But I get a kick when I look at somebody on television. He's lost 13 people. I lost 13 people. They lost 13 people.
Of Donald Trump's antics, and they are calling him out publicly. One of the families of a fallen American soldier in the war in Iran is now slamming Donald Trump in a new statement for his uncalled for war, and they're saying that it didn't have to be this way, yet Donald Trump himself made it this way. And the really sad thing about this story is not only are we talking about a fallen American hero, but also Donald Trump just doesn't care about them or their family. He cares about the headline, the fact that he's getting bad press and it's getting traction, but he doesn't actually care about the content of the story. He doesn't care that this family is grieving and they're angry at him for putting them in this situation. So I want to dive into the story, read you what they said, but I want to start with talking about the 6 American soldiers who recently died, which this man who is related to this family was part of. And I said this on Twitter last night. These are the 6 American heroes who died in a refueling operation as part of Trump's Iran war. You have John A. Klinner, Tyler Simmons, whose family has put out this statement, Ashley Pruitt, Seth Koval, Curtis Angst, and Ariana Savino. And they are all under the age of 38. And they range between 38 all the way down to 28. Really, really young people who have lost their lives in this war because of Donald Trump. Now, a GoFundMe has been set up for Alex Klinner, one of the fallen soldiers, and they've already raised $1.2 million, but no amount of money is going to be able to heal their pain, the pain of his wife and his children that he leaves behind. He won't be able to solve any of that, but $1.2 million will help them stay afloat and help them pay for the things they need to now that Alex Klinner has passed away. But this is not exactly news with Donald Trump. We've known for quite some time that he doesn't care about fallen American soldiers. He doesn't care about their families. Going all the way back to his first term, he said that fallen American soldiers who died at war are losers and suckers. He didn't want disabled Americans, as a result of their war fighting, to be involved in a military parade because he thought it looked weak.
That's Donald Trump, a man who has dodged the war. He hasn't fought a war in his life, yet people voted for him. Okay? That's the thing I never got. This man has never known struggle. He has never known hardship. This man has a golden toilet in one of his residences. A golden toilet. He has always lived with a silver spoon in his mouth. He doesn't know what it's like to choose between food and the light bill or the water bill. He has never struggled like any other common American. That's the thing. Yet you thought he was good for the country. But this man has a horrible business record, doesn't even pay his workers, and you didn't think that was going to be a problem. The Fox host, realized Trump has lost his mind.
For 3 consecutive nights now. This comes after the Iranians attacked vessels in the Strait of Hormuz. How would you describe what is happening at this moment? Has the war resumed?
Well, I guess you could define it any way you want, but certainly we're beating them up really badly. They have to be beat up. We're hitting them very, very hard. We're hitting every single thing that they have along the shore, along the waterfront. If you look at the Strait of Hormuz, it's now, we're finding it hard to find where they have anything. We have to stop it. We have to keep it open. I was going to charge a fee, but instead they'd rather They spend a lot of money in the United States, which frankly is better because I don't like the idea of a fee.
So we talked about this. He initially imposed a 20% fee on all cargo going through the Strait of Hormuz, which amounts to about $30 million per supertanker, and then he had to walk it back after the markets roiled. Now he's trying to save face. Actually, I got something even better. I got record investment in the United States. Nobody believes it. Well, let's continue.
But I think we've made tremendous progress.
So your objectives are to ensure that Iran never has a nuclear weapon, to keep the strait open, and to degrade the Iranian military. Can those objectives be completed in an air campaign alone, or does this require a ground component?
Well, I think they're completed now, honestly. If we left right now, it would take them 20 years to rebuild what they have. The only way you can negotiate with these people is through strength, and the only strength is military strength, and that's what we've done.
No, you didn't have to use military strength. Obama negotiated with these people with no military strength. He had a nuclear peace deal. Not a soul was lost. All you had to do was leave that alone, Donald, but you didn't want to. Because Israel matters more than the American people.
And I mean, literally 2 days ago we had a deal, and then they broke it at the last moment.
Okay, so no, you can't accomplish all of those things with an air campaign alone. And for Trump to say that the goals have been accomplished already means that you should just withdraw from Iran altogether. If you got what you want, if you won, they lost, if you're, I'm the big special boy and I'm so much better than they are, then just leave, man. The fact that you're still there and still fighting with them and still having this whipsawing back and forth is further proof that you didn't get everything you wanted. You're actually losing on the strategic level, especially as your poll numbers continue to drop.
Will these strikes continue?
They'll continue until I say it's enough. I mean, they'll continue. They've been, the word the military likes to use is degrade. They've been degraded to a very low level. And they have fight. It's like a great boxer. You think you have him beat, and then all of a sudden he comes back and he gives you a shot. They have some fight left, but they don't have much. And their weapon degrading has been incredible.
Again, totally internally consistent. He'll say, we won, we got everything they wanted, we're so much more powerful than they are, their Navy's gone, their Air Force is gone, their air...
This will cause retaliation from Iran, and they're working on their nuclear program.
Threats to target Iranian infrastructure, that it will respond by destroying, quote, all the infrastructure in the region. The spokesperson for Iran's military also warning that under no circumstances would the U.S. be allowed to interfere in the Strait of Hormuz. They called it Iran's invincible red line. And this comes after President Trump on Tuesday told Fox News that he's planning to knock out Iran's power plants and bridges next week unless the Iranians come to the table to negotiate. And it all underscores now the new stage that the U.S. and Iran are in. 5 straight days at this point of U.S. attacks across Iran, including several waves yesterday, some of which you're seeing here. We're expecting possibly more strikes coming today. The U.S. blockade is also now back in place, and the U.S. military fired on an oil tanker bound for Kharg Island late yesterday. And threats are ramping up on both sides. Reuters reports this morning that Iran has asked the Houthis in Yemen to shut down the Red Sea oil route if the U.S. were to strike Iran's power infrastructure. That's the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, the primary alternative to the Strait of Hormuz. And the report is according to 3 unnamed sources, but it shows, guys, how this latest back and forth between the U.S. and Iran is now threatening to spill out much more broadly to the rest of the region, and how the impact on global energy markets.
We also need their fertilizer. We need resources for our farms. And Trump is making sure that we are screwed.
Donald Trump has mentioned the phrase ground campaign. Many military analysts believe an invasion remains unlikely, but the commander-in-chief of the US Armed Forces says sometimes they're necessary. So what could a US ground operation actually look like? Well, Iran is 4 times larger than Iraq, the last place the US invaded. Iran has vast deserts, rugged mountain ranges, and fortified underground facilities. Experts say this would likely rule out any attempt to invade and occupy territory in the country's interior, leaving only the possibility, in theory, of a small, precise mission aimed at seizing strategic sites around the Gulf. So unlike the US invasion of Iraq in 2003, this will be less about trying to topple the leadership and administer state affairs, and rather have a much narrower objective: protect shipping. To do that, the US would need to secure monopolized control over the Strait of Hormuz. One possibility could involve seizing strategically located Iranian islands overlooking the waterway, analysts told Al Jazeera. The US almost certainly has the military capability to capture an island, but gaining control would be another matter entirely. Before any landing, US forces would first have to suppress Iranian air defenses, coastal missile batteries, drone launch sites, naval bases, and command centers. Even then, troops would remain within range of missiles, drones, artillery, and fast attack boats operating from the Iranian mainland. And this poses the problem for the US. Analysts say Iran's missile and drone launchers can be moved, hidden, and dispersed across land, which means capturing islands alone would not work to prevent attacks on ships. In fact, Iran would not need to recapture the islands immediately. Instead, it could turn them into costly, embarrassing traps for the US through persistent small-scale losses, wearing down personnel and resources. Ultimately, to genuinely secure the strait, the US would likely have to continuously suppress Iranian positions along the southern coastline, and potentially even occupy parts of the mainland. The challenge would then no longer just be protecting shipping and taking territory, but keeping thousands of troops supplied and protected under constant attack. And by that point, while a ground operation may have produced a dramatic military image, it would risk becoming the opening phase of a much bigger ground war.
And someone tells me that the U.S. troops, a lot of U.S. troops are going to die. Not to mention the fact that they're not being fed properly. These U.S. troops are not being fed properly. So how you expect them to fight a war if they can't function with their stomach growling? They can't function. They're hungry, and you want them to fight. This is insane.
US and maybe Israel are going to have to relaunch the war again to try and do what they didn't do the first time?
Yes, and it'll be a bigger, worse war. So this is not a situation where we're relaunching the old war. So a lot of the media now is saying, well, are we going back to March? No, this will be much worse than that. We are going to likely have ground operations unfold where we're actually on the coast of Iran. I would say this is 70% likely. What's going on is a fundamental zero-sum disagreement about who will control the Strait of Hormuz. Is it going to be Iran that will control it, in which case they will become the fourth center of world power in about a year and a half, the dominant state in the Persian Gulf and in the Middle East, or America, in which case Iran will go back to becoming the declining power? Hormuz is not just about some tolls. This is more than that. It's geopolitics of the first order and changing the balance of power in the region and really around the world.
And the world's going to shit again. Oh my God. So the Wars Powers Resolution has restarted, everybody. At this point, we're at 3 wars, but honestly, it's one continuous war, but I guess Trump would rather do 3 wars than 1. I guess. This is stupid. Anyways, what I found really funny was that this motherfucker the other day was like, we're going to charge people, all the commercial ships, we're going to charge y'all because we're giving you safe passage and protection. But when Iran was doing that, it wasn't protective payments. It was unlawful. It was prohibiting free trade and free water, free international waters, which was insane because like the water's not even international, it belongs to Iran. But that's not the point. But you know what's funny? That 20% charge went down the motherfucking drain. The shipping company said, bitch, we're not. Hapag-Lloyd said, bitch, no, absolutely the fuck not. So instead of that, Trump was like, okay, the Gulf states have to give us investments and trade agreements. Again, dressed it up differently, but still have to pay for protection, which is insane. And you know what's funny? Like what I find funny about the Gulf states is like, now you have to pay the West. Now you have to give them investments. Now you have to give them all this trade, all this cheap trade and shit. When you could have just paid Iran $2 million. Come on now. How old is the motherfucking money? That's what I want to know. What I think is also interesting is that like the USA is selling this protection, forcing these trade agreements, being shiesty about a lot of things. Obviously, you can tell a shiesty businessman is running this motherfucking country. But you're the reason why they need protection in the first place. If it wasn't for you and what you did with your people back in February, no one would be in these predicaments whatsoever. And the thing is like, it's not about free international trade. It's about telling Iran that they're not allowed to become a regional power. Like, Iran is being blocked specifically while commercial ships are allowed to go through the Strait of Hormuz. And to me, that's just the USA trying to paint itself as a savior. Like, see, we're actually protecting everybody. They're bad. They're evil. They're not good. They don't want to protect you. And honestly, they're just doing the same thing. And also, too, on another hand, is that Trump is just trying to show strength. Like, we will control your sovereignty. We will take away your independence. We don't give a fuck about no geography, and we don't give a fuck about no regional authority. We will show you what we want to authoritize. And so he's being authoritative over somebody else's geography, and he's trying to show strength. And I'm just not a fan of that. And not only are you expanding authority over civilian infrastructure, imports and exports, meaning they can decide if Iran gets medicine or not, if they get food, if they get fertilizer, if they let oil leave, if they don't let oil leave. That's what the U.S. is doing. But at the same time,
this is why America is hated, looked upon as the great Satan everywhere around the world. Because of people like Trump. Okay, he is making it impossible for us to be liked across the world. Trade is going to be difficult. And American citizens traveling different countries, especially Middle Eastern countries, they may have issues because of what Trump is doing with Iran.
Started the War Powers Resolution Clock. People are saying to protect the commercial vessels. No. The Pentagon is saying that the slight attacks that have been going on that are, hitting coastal defense systems and other military infrastructure is to aid a grander escalation in the future. So what they're doing is that they're trying to slowly blow up pieces of military infrastructure in Iran. And the USA is using violence to stop Iran from using its own geography for recognition as a regional power and a regional authority. While Iran is trying to coerce vessels using a choke point and insurances and countries around them, the United States is coercing the economy through the military and financial power, right? Using sanctions, threatening them, telling them if you pay Tehran, you're going to be sanctioned. If you listen to them, you're going to be sanctioned. We're going to take your money, we're going to freeze your assets, we're going to do all of that. In Iran's coercion appears as disruption, right? Like, it seems like Iran's the reason why the global economy, the trade, the food is all the shit. But really, it is the USA's fault because it was not constructed. Like, the international order that the USA/the West constructed was not created by Iran or countries like Iran. So no matter what Iran does, it's always going to look like the disruption, right? So now we're in the third phase of this war. So the third war, because this is the new third World Powers Resolution. This shit's stupid. And it's just a pattern that just keeps going on. We claim victory by using a fake historic settlement agreement. Then we use that fake historic settlement agreement to restart attacks. And then once we kind of push the person and they start to lash out, now we want to restart the Worst Powers Resolution Act. Also, what's hilarious to me is that, you're breaking for new phases because, one, you're really scared of Iran having any type of authority over their own geography, which makes no sense to me. And two, because you're trying to prevent the disruption from making it all the way over to America and hitting voters, and it's already hitting the voters. Gas is already up $4 a gallon. Gas prices have already gone up. The stocks have already gone up.
I thought Trump was making everything affordable. I thought gas prices were down. I thought grocery prices were down. I thought Trump was making everything affordable. I guess not.
This week starting. And lastly, Gulf states are not safe. I don't know what the fuck they be thinking sometimes. Because they host the military infrastructure and architecture that the U.S. uses against Iran, Iran has said, they're no longer going to take it easy on them. Iraq has traveled to the USA and asked for aid, asked for help, asked for some way to get some authority, some sovereignty, because, Izzy over there in 4 different corners building bases and shit that they didn't even know about. They need help. And so the U.S. was like, yeah, sure, we'll help you if you disarm the Iranian-backed groups. You want to know what the Iranian-backed groups said? They said, disarm us and watch how we get down. Y'all was over there struggling. Y'all don't even know who's in y'all country, Iraq. You want to get down with the people who know your country like the back of their hand because they live there? You tripping.
Third lie about this war.
You haven't even noticed the first two yet. 5 nights, 5 straight nights of American bombs hitting Iran, Bandar Abbas, Greater Tunb Island, Hengam Island, and now strikes landing closer to Tehran than at any point in this entire war. Here's what nobody's telling you. The reason for this war has changed twice already, and there's a third shift happening right now, live, that I'm going to show you in the last 2 minutes of this video, because once you see it, you will never watch war coverage the same way again. 35 people confirmed dead, over 300 wounded. A hospital in southern Iran had to evacuate 211 patients in the middle of the strikes. And through all of it, ask yourself one question. Why does the official reason for this war keep quietly rewriting itself? Stay with me, because by the end of this, you'll be able to predict exactly what they say next before they say it. Go back to February. What were you told on day 1 of this war? Iran was building a nuclear weapon, a secret site called Pickaxe Mountain, buried so deep under Natanz that even America's bunker buster bombs supposedly couldn't reach it. That was lie number 1, or at least that was the pitch. Nuclear weapons, existential threat. A story built to be simple, urgent, and impossible to argue with, because who's going to publicly stand up and say, let them have the bomb? Nobody. That's exactly why this was the opening story. It didn't need to be fully true. It just needed to be effective enough to get the first bombs in the air without resistance. Write that down, because you're about to watch it disappear completely, and almost nobody will notice the moment it happens. Now, listen to what US Central Command is actually saying tonight on night 5. Not, we struck a nuclear site. Listen carefully. They say they're hitting command centers, air defense systems, missile and drone capabilities, coastal surveillance facilities to, in their own words, degrade Iran's ability to threaten commercial shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. Read that again. Commercial shipping, not centrifuges, not enrichment, not weapons-grade uranium, ships. Somewhere between night 1 and night 5, the entire justification for this war rotated 90 degrees, and nobody held a press conference to announce it. It just quietly shifted. That's lie number 2. Not that ships don't matter, but that this was ever presented to you as the reason the war started. It wasn't. It became the reason once the first reason stopped holding up under scrutiny. This is the pattern you need to learn to spot, because it will happen again in the next war, and the one after that. So, if it's not about nuclear weapons anymore, what is it actually about? The president told you himself on live television without being asked twice. He said America is going to keep the strait, that the US will run it, that America will become the guardian of Hormuz, and that other nations will need to pay for that protection.
How are you going to do that when Iran is the one in charge of the Strait of Hormuz? Just saying.
He floated a 20% fee on all cargo passing through one of the most important oil choke points on Earth. A fifth of the entire world's oil moves through this stretch of water every single day. This isn't a defensive war anymore, if it ever fully was. This is a toll booth built with fighter jets and naval blockades. Nuclear threat gets the public on board in the first week. Protecting shipping keeps the public on board once the nuclear story quietly falls apart by week 2. But a permanent occupation of Hormuz with a 20% tax on global trade, that was never something you could sell as the opening pitch on day 1. Nobody starts a war by saying, we want to charge you rent on the ocean. That's the part you back into, slowly, one bombing night at a time, until it starts sounding almost reasonable. Now, here's the part I promised you. The third shift, and it's happening as I record this. As of this week, Trump is now threatening to strike Iran's infrastructure directly, bridges, power plants, unless Tehran comes back to the negotiating table. Iran's military has responded by warning it will crush infrastructure across the entire region in return, a threat aimed squarely at the wider Gulf, not just military targets. Watch this pattern closely. Nuclear threat, then shipping lanes, now infrastructure and civilian systems. Each time the story shifts, the target list gets a little wider and the war gets a little harder to end. Because a war about shipping ends the moment ships move safely again. A war about infrastructure doesn't have a finish line at all. Bridges and power plants aren't things you can secure with a blockade. They're things you can only threaten indefinitely. Meanwhile, Iran's own foreign ministry has said flatly no plans for negotiations. Even Tehran's own diplomats are split internally, some pushing to stay open to talks, others insisting the only real resolution is the complete withdrawal of the American military from the region. Which means, using their own public statements against them, this isn't ending this week. It might not end this year. So what would actually solve this? Not the version that keeps oil markets nervous and weapons contracts flowing, but the version that genuinely ends the war. A neutral, internationally monitored shipping corridor through Hormuz, not run by one military, not taxed by one government, was already proposed earlier this year through Oman. It got rejected. That's the version of protecting shipping that doesn't come with a toll receipt attached to it. That's the version where nobody gets to call themselves guardian of anything, because nobody needs a guardian when the arrangement is neutral by design. But that version doesn't get anyone a permanent base. It doesn't get anyone a 20% cut of global trade. And that's precisely why it's not the version being pursued tonight. While bombs are still falling on Bandar Abbas and Hengam Island. 5 nights, 3 shifting justifications. 1 toll booth quietly being built in international waters.
That's the whole plan. Make America great again, right? By harassing and making everybody's lives hell. It's not really for America. It's for the ruling elite. This is what Trump is doing for the ruling elite. Not America. The ruling elite will be making that money. Let's go. Speaking of making America great again, let's talk about what's going on in Mississippi and what they mean by making America great again.
It's sad as hell that I even gotta say this shit. And it's even more sad that y'all have to go on fucking TikTok to find out this fucking bullshit. For those of y'all who don't know what the fuck is going on in the state of Mississippi, they are trying to pass a law to reinstate the Jim Crow laws. Let me say this one more time for the people who did not motherfucking hear me. They are trying to reinstate the Jim Crow laws. And for all you who are young and y'all don't know what the Jim Crow laws are, look up the story of Emmett Till. Enough motherfucking saying. That brings me to my next motherfucking statement, and it's sad as fuck that I even gotta say this shit. We cannot depend on the motherfucking government for help. Cause look what the fuck the government is allowing to fucking happen, bro. We cannot depend on... It's sad as...
Can't. You cannot. This is what's going on right now. All right. New but not improved. Mississippi's Jim Crow Laws 2.0. February of 2023, the representatives of Mississippi passed bills in the House and Senate that some are referring to as Jim Crow 2.0, and rightfully so. Jackson, Mississippi, the state's capital, has an 85% black majority population. This has been the case since its colonial establishment in 1821. Mississippi has a difficult and complicated history of enslaved labor, racism, and segregation. It was part of the 11 Confederate States during the American Civil War, and Jackson specifically was captured 5 times by the Union before the Confederacy surrendered in April of 1865. Since then, Jackson has become the most populous city in Mississippi, and although reforms have been made to combat the insistent issue of discrimination in the Deep South, the city remains riddled with remnants of antebellum America. In recent years, Jackson has faced water crisis along with racially coded bills that promote disproportionate police power while demoting black voices within a majority black municipality. For example, according to the Institute of Black World 21st Century, SB 2343 gives Capitol Police jurisdiction relative to the enforcement of all laws of the state of Mississippi within the boundaries of the city of Jackson, Mississippi. The law also removes jurisdiction from the city over event permits, including those for protests in the area near the Capitol. Although the proponents of this bill claim that it is for the purposes of combating the overwhelmingly high homicide rates in Jackson, this bill targets black lives. The infamous George Floyd case comes close to mind, but this injustice is not unique, as unjustified police violence against black persons can be identified as a pattern in modern society. Adjacent to this bill is HB 1020, but simply as introduced as HB 1020 will create 2 new courts within the Capital Improvement District, the CCID, with each judge to be appointed by Chief Justice of Mississippi Supreme Court. Currently, the Mississippi Supreme Court Chief Justice is Michael K. Randolph, a white Republican male, not at all representative of the 85% black population of Jackson nor of Mississippi as a whole. After this bill was amended in the Senate, the original 2 courts were redacted, but it still authorizes the Supreme Court Chief Justice to appoint 4 special circuit judges for the city of Jackson. The new system of appointed judges will replace the previous method of voter-elected judges. Therefore, Randolph and his appointees, most likely also white and conservative, will have the power to dictate the political atmosphere of Jackson for decades going forward. Both police-focused SB 2343 and discrimination bill HB 1020 are set to become laws in July of 2023. While face value, these bills may appear to have not any racial biases. Upon further investigation, it becomes evident that these laws stem from discriminatory racial ideologies. And yet, the scariest part of these new legislations is that they are not new at all. Alongside these racially targeted bills were others just like it that either died in committee or in one of the branches. One bill that would improve racial awareness and honor black history in America that unfortunately died in the committee was HB 595, which would require the Mississippi State Board of Education to implement a comprehensive curriculum in courses in African American studies and racial diversity in public schools as an optional elective, meaning they won't be forced. It's not something you have to take. It's by choice. If the legislators in Mississippi truly cared for the well-being and education of the citizens, this bill had no reason to die, especially in a state with such a large black population. Although it may seem far-fetched watching from the sidelines, Mississippi new Jim Crow laws are likely to influence other state legislators to enact similar laws, especially now that the landmark case Roe v. Wade was overturned in 2022, and more conservative policies are being enacted on the federal level. Villanova, Pennsylvania is not away from the dangers of racism in Mississippi. Here, students are required to take at least 2 DEI courses as part of the curriculum, but racism is an ideology that does not change after a couple of courses in diversity, although the classes may help. As Villanova students, I believe we have a responsibility to deeply care and acknowledge the core values of the institution, Unitas, Cratus, and Veritas, as part of one's own daily narrative. The Jim Crow laws have made a comeback in Mississippi. It may seem like the world is reverting to the echoes of the racist past, but it is not too late to change what is unjust. In this modern and interconnected society, it is imperative to be aware of the political climates, laws, and ideologies, even when one is not directly affected, because someone else's reality may become yours one day, and you must fight back. It's true, we are going back to the Jim Crow era. Trump is trying to bring us back there. That's what he's trying to do. This is what they meant by make America great again. So let's talk about Nolan Wells, an update.
Physically and emotionally tortured him.
The body of 18-year-old black teenager Nolan Xavier Wells has been found. He went missing on July 4th while traveling by boat with 3 white friends to Horn Island, Mississippi, approximately 10 miles from the Gulf Coast. On July 6th, a park administrator discovered him in the water near the northwest end of the island. His phone was not on his person, but in his father's hand. Since his disappearance, search teams, including the Kazakh Navy, have conducted a comprehensive search of both land and sea areas. The authorities have not yet specified how many people were on the boat or who reported the disappearance, but online videos show that a dispute may have occurred before Wells was abandoned by his friends, who then left on another boat without him. It is also reported that Wells was originally supposed to meet a girl. His white friends had quickly hired lawyers, one of whom was the child of a judge. This immediate legal protection raised questions. Why did the phone return but he did not? Why did they immediately receive legal protection? The family and activists were extremely angry.
There's no meritocracy in America. Okay, there's no meritocracy when it comes to these racist whites. They want the right to rape, beat, eat black people all over again. They want the right to oppress their women. They want the right to marry underage girls. 38 Oklahoma Republican senators voted against banning child marriage. Okay, 22 Republican Colorado, resident senators voted against banning AI child, you know what. Okay? They want the right to oppress women. They want the right to abuse and harm minorities. And they want to be poorly educated and be proud to be white. That's what they want. That's what they mean by make America great again. Don't ask stupid questions. Who abuses minorities? Don't ask stupid questions. I'm not going to answer that. Matter of fact, you got to go, Cap. I'm not going to put up with that. Ask your dumb questions somewhere else.
Drawing comparisons between this case and other instances where the deaths of black victims were hastily dismissed as accidents. The authorities are awaiting DNA confirmation, although the family has...
Yeah, we don't live in that type of society, okay? Respectability politics does not work. You could have a good job, you could have a good character, but in reality, they see you as less than. They come at you with a position of, I'm superior to you because I was born white. That is what they mean, okay? Martin Luther King, I hate to break it to you, but he was a plant. Martin Luther King was a puppet to the elite, okay? He was a puppet of the boule. That's what he was about. Okay? He had dinner with the the Rockefellers. Okay? He was a plant. All right? That's what Martin Luther King was about. Even he said it. I made the mistake of bringing my people into a burning house. All right? That's what he was. You don't hire people. Look, this is what they want. I'm trying to tell you what they want, Kiwi. All right? This is what they want. This is what MAGA wants. This is what the administration wants. They want to go back to a pre-civil rights era. Okay? I don't know what you can't understand about that. All right, Kiwi Honor. You can't understand that? That is what they want. That's what they mean by make America great again. That they could harm and oppress black people. All right? That's what they want. They don't care about merit. They don't care about character. White is right to them. They would rather hire a white person that is not qualified for the job than hire a black person that is qualified for the job. That's what they want. Okay? Charlie Kirk was a racist scumbag. He was saying that I'm more comfortable with a white pilot with a jawline. He didn't mention that pilot was qualified. Just the fact that he was white and he has a jawline. That shows how poorly educated Charlie Kirk was. A college dropout, okay, that was a political whore for Israel. And then when he found out what it cost to be a political whore for Israel, he thought he could go and be a whistleblower without consequences. That's what it's about. To Charlie Kirk. That's what he meant by make America great again. Charlie Kirk was fighting for a white America. And this country is racist, and they want to go back to their racist roots. That is why the elite is using the poor white people to do their dirty work. The poor, poorly educated, refuse to learn anything white people, racist whites, to harm minorities. They want to go back where they don't have to hire you because, of the law, that they can't discriminate against you because of skin color.
Have GPS data showing exactly where the boat went throughout the day. Autopsy results are now in, and we now have GPS data showing exactly where the boat went throughout the day. So Nolan Well's official autopsy was performed on July 7th at the Mississippi State Medical Examiner's office, and an independent autopsy commissioned by the family was scheduled shortly after, meaning at both autopsies have been completed, and full and final autopsy results usually take between 6 to 12 weeks to be released, but preliminary findings are usually available and released within 24 to 72 hours. And the attorney Ben Crum said that independent autopsy results were in and expected to be released Friday, July 10th. However, they were delayed due to issues transporting Well's body, which is making people wonder why the preliminary findings of the official autopsy have not yet been released when it was performed before the independent autopsy.
Let's play that again.
Autopsy results are now in, and we now have GPS data showing exactly where the boat went throughout the day. So Nolan Well's official autopsy was performed on July 7th at the Mississippi State Medical Examiner's office, and an independent autopsy commissioned by the family was scheduled shortly after, meaning as of today, both autopsies have been completed, and full and final autopsy results usually take between 6 to 12 weeks to be released, but preliminary findings are usually available and released within 24 to 72 hours. And the attorney Ben Crum said that independent autopsy results were in and expected to be released Friday, July 10th. However, they were delayed due to issues transporting Well's body, which is making people wonder why the preliminary findings of the official autopsy have not yet been released when it was performed before the independent autopsy. I mean, what are they waiting for? Are they waiting for the results of the independent autopsy to be released first? And if so, that is wrong on so many levels. Yeah.
Racism in America. I hope they lawyer up. They get a Jewish lawyer. They get whatever type of lawyer with a good track record of winning in these cases, these type of cases, because they need to go to war. They have to go to war with the law. Get good lawyers and go to war in this courtroom. Because these people are demonic. Racism is evil, and I believe it's demonic.
Nolan Well's case, the more questions I have. So let's look at this timeline. Let's talk about it. At 9:56 a.m., the boat leaves the dock. At 11:14 a.m., the boat arrives at Horn Island. And around 3 o'clock p.m., Nolan is reportedly last seen. At 4:31 p.m., GPS shows the boat leaving Horn Island without Nolan. Sometimes after leaving the island, a distress call was reportedly made claiming the boat was taking on water and needed assistance. The exact time of that call is not publicly confirmed. At 5:44 p.m., the boat returns to the original dock. 5:52 p.m., GPS shows the boat traveling into Fort Bayou, and at 6:06 p.m., the boat returns to the original dock again. At 7:19 p.m., the boat goes to the Fort Bayou boat launch. Again, around 11 o'clock p.m., the Coast Guard says it was notified that Nolan was missing. Now,
Appreciate the people coming by, the 12 listeners. Please share this content. It's important, especially when it comes to Nolan Wells. More exposure, more people could possibly donate to Nolan's cause, to the family, and they could have enough money, a war chest, to go against these racist, evil people who took his life.
Here's what I'm trying to understand. If the boat had a mechanical emergency that required everyone to leave the island, when exactly did that happen? How serious was the issue? Why does the GPS show the boat continuing to travel afterward? Why the additional trips to Fort Bayou? And if Nolan was last seen around 3 o'clock p.m., why wasn't the Coast Guard notified that he was missing until around 11 o'clock p.m.? Listen, I'm not saying this timeline proves anyone committed a crime. I'm saying there are questions that deserve answers. That's why the GPS data, Coast Guard records, phone records, and witness statements all need to be compared.
Pretty much.
Regarding the Nolan Wells case, Governor Tate Reeves spoke for the first time about the investigation. He said, "I personally know Sheriff John Ledbetter from Jackson County very well. I have not personally spoken to him, but I have full confidence that he is going to do his job. What I will simply say is I don't know all the details. I don't know all of the facts surrounding the case. I have yet to see a fact or a piece of evidence that suggests any foul play. But if there is, I feel confident that the Sheriff's Office and the District Attorney's Office, the members at the Department of Public Safety that deal with these crimes, if there had been, they will find it and they will do what is necessary." Once the Jackson County Sheriff's Office investigation into Nolan's death is complete, the District Attorney's Office will present the case to a grand jury. That is standard procedure for most unnatural or suspicious deaths in Jackson County.
He just says that's very bad news for the other best friend. What he just says contradicts quick enough. Hold on to every word he just says. That's very bad news for the other best friend. What he just says contradicts, and I'll be real, it even indicts and take away the other best friend claims of being innocent. What he just said is very bad for the other best friend. Let me explain. Javon just said, the person who was screaming and yelling in the video, who was so hostile, we had to remove him from off the island, that was Tristan Shepard. That was the other friend. Now, hold on to what he just said, because it's very important. Don't let go of those words. It was Tristan Shepard who was quote-unquote screaming. And it was Tristan Shepard who was so hostile and so out of control, they had to move him off the island earlier in the day.
Developments tonight in the mysterious death of 18-year-old Nolan Wells. For the first time, one of Wells' friends who was with him during that 4th of July boating trip is speaking out. He's responding to the growing questions surrounding the teen's death and the speculation that has exploded online. Investigators say Wells disappeared during a trip to Horn Island off the Mississippi Gulf Coast. His body was found there 2 days later. 16 WABT's Carlos Garcia here now with us with what that friend is saying, Carlos.
That's right. Well, Nolan Wells' friend says that it wasn't Nolan that was featured in a viral video. Apparently shows several people arguing, but rather it was him engaging in the verbal altercation while Nolan was elsewhere.
I just know I've lost my best friend.
For the first time, a friend who was with 18-year-old Nolan Wells the day he disappeared is speaking out. Tristan Shepard declined to appear on camera, saying he and the others who were on the boat have been receiving threats.
We did no wrong here, and we don't understand how we're getting so much hate behind it. We all cared and loved Nolan, and nobody wanted to see Nolan die. Nobody wanted to see his life be taken so short.
Shepard also addressed this viral video that has fueled speculation online. Nolan's parents believed it showed their son involved in a confrontation, but Shepard says it wasn't Nolan, it was him.
That's the video I'm referring to. That's me yelling.
Shepard says he returned to the mainland later that afternoon, while Wells stayed behind on Horn Island with a girl he had met that day.
Let's break this down very slowly. Tristan Shepard was on the boat with Nolan. Tristan Shepard is obviously one of the suspects in Nolan's death because he was on the boat with Nolan and those other white boys. Tristan Shepard claims he was Nolan's best friend. That's the first lie. Because the parents have never heard of Tristan Shepard, never seen Tristan Shepard, don't know who Tristan Shepard is.
I saw that today for the first time because really a lot of folks who were there have been silent. We saw, people taking down their Facebook. It was almost an instant reaction.
Sooner or later, this stuff's gonna come together, man. Sooner or later, everything's gonna start coming out in the wash. Can't keep this lie up forever.
Are trying to justify it. Here are the facts. Nolan Wells was murdered and people are trying to justify it. Here are the facts. They had his phone and his wallet on the boat. They didn't give his phone to his mom right away. When his mom got the phone back, messages had been deleted. They privated all their social medias immediately and they all got lawyers. Those are the facts. The amount of people in my comments are talking about, black on black crime. You're not talking about that. Or, he's black. He didn't know how to swim. Have some fucking class or use critical thinking. You're just resorting to racism and to bigotry. It just shows a lack of empathy and a lack of understanding of the discrimination that black people have to face and the lack of care and attention that these stories receive from the media. I've been talking to people about it a lot because I think it's important to spread awareness and it's important to talk about. And so many people do not know about this story because it's not getting the coverage that it deserves. Use more common sense instead of trying to justify what happened and resorting to hate and racism. Nolan Wells was murdered. Say his name.
All right, y'all. So first, I would like to say I am loving the fact that other races are coming together to open up the eyes of this set situation with Nolan Wells and situations like this of African Americans. So I have gotten updates of what's going on. I have just gotten an update that Nolan's parents have had a press conference and an interview with Good Morning America and has come out with some evidence. Man, I tell you, it is juicy. But I'm going to let y'all watch this video so that you guys can start seeing what I've been saying in my last videos. I've been on the road.
Because like I said, the entire summer he's training, he got more serious. He started to understand what I was trying to tell him about football not just being fun, but as you get farther in it, it becomes a business. If you want to excel, you have to understand, and you have to understand both at the same time.
And we know, Ben, that you said that you're going to do an independent investigation.
Yes.
And you said you have Nolan's cell phone and messages were deleted. How could you tell messages were deleted?
Well, his parents got the phone back, and that's something that's important, Michael, because they tracked this phone on Life 360.
So Life 360, but when I received the phone call from Warren, I immediately called my friend Tashima and I said, hey, have you guys seen Nolan? Because her two sons, Jalen and Javon, they grew up together. They played City League sports together. When they got into school, they played sports together. And so she was like, hey, okay, the boys were pulling up the location from Snapchat. So the Snapchat location looks completely different than the Life 360 location. So when I pulled up Life 360, it was different. It was showing everywhere the phone had been. I was like, well, it's showing that he's back on land. I'm not. He's like, but no, he didn't come back with us.
Well, how were you able to get the phone?
So we tracked it, and my friend Tashima went and picked it up.
It wasn't like they said we got his phone, they tracked it. And that highlights all these contradictions, Michael. The fact that they said Nolan was talking to a young woman and she said that he said, I'm going back to get on the boat with the boys. The boys said that he said he was going to stay with her. And so that's an obvious contradiction. And then this video of this, you can hear an argument going where Nolan is saying, give me my freaking phone. What are you freaking doing? And so then his phone ends up missing. I don't know any teenagers, Michael Strahan, who says, if you believe that story, I'm going to stay behind and I'm going to leave my phone. I mean, no young person leaves their cell phone. And so then there's so many things that their parents were telling us.
All right, y'all. So after that video, I'm just saying, like, all these evidence and that has been going on, people who have been getting on these social platforms and been investigating and coming out with the same conclusions as the parents, you know for a fact that we are all on the same page. So
Yeah. What teenager? Teenagers can't live without their phone. They cannot live without their phone. You tell me that kid's on that island by himself and he's going to give you his only phone, the phone that he could talk to his parents, that he could reach out to his family? This is insane, man. It's insane.
That proves that he was murdered by those. Evidence has just come out in the Nolan Wells case that proves that he was murdered by those three men. There was a pool party that took place after the island, and you can see clearly in Evan's Instagram post, Nolan is there. Witnesses have put out statements saying that an altercation took place between Nolan, Evan, and two other boys, and the boys proceeded to beat Nolan to death with a metal bar and urinate on him. And all those people there watched and did nothing about it. They are no better than the people that killed him. The reason that Nolan's phone pinged on the island is because they went back and they dumped his body after they killed him. These men need to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law because they murdered Nolan Wells.
You're telling me the news and police lied that Nolan friends did not give back his phone to the mom. The mom had to track the phone down and go to the friend house and make them give the phone back. Where both his Snapchats have been wiped of everything that happened that day in conversation. Then they lied about not knowing where Nolan car keys was to the where they homegirl said, Cap, the keys is on top of the Xbox. She seen him put it there. And his homeboys had to go get it. The dad took a boat to the island on July 5th to try to find his body. They could not find it. He went missing July 4th. But he magically appeared July 6th? There were people on the island and all. No one seen a body float on July 6th when no one was there. That's when the body appeared? Yo, do you think we stupid? Yo, I ain't gonna lie. I don't know what Mississippi Sheriff Department got going on, but at this point, a higher power needs to...
This is Make America Great Again, right? This is make... Whew. This is what you got to deal with. Prayers to the family. Prayers to the family. Let's talk about flock cameras right now. What are flock cameras?
Cameras are not just crime deterrents. They are watching you. They are logging you, even if you do not commit a crime. They have systems that log your license plate, your vehicle details, the time that you were there, the location. They can catalog your make, model, color, bumper stickers, roof racks, even visible damage to your vehicle down to scratches and dents. And then they store that data in searchable databases used by police and other three-letter agencies across the country. That is not just crime prevention. That is mass surveillance being marketed to us as safety. Well, don't do crime and you'll be okay. You are thinking way too small. You are quite literally still inside of the box. You trust the government with a permanent surveillance network? Freedom means being left alone by the state unless you have actually done something, not being tracked just in case. And something that absolutely baffles me is the fact that the CEO of Flock Safety has already compared people exposing the camera locations and criticizing these systems to terrorists and Antifa. That should alarm everyone. That is how civil liberties get eroded. First by labeling dissent as dangerous, then by expanding surveillance in the name of security, right? And before I show you what a flock looks like, let's talk about my own city. If these cameras are just harmless crime deterrents,
and they can hear you now. So they saying anywhere you see a flock camera, don't talk. A lot of people been cutting the flock cameras down, and they say if you don't do this, point lasers into the lens, it destroys the camera. So I'm against destroying the camera. Don't do that. But if you got a little green laser, maybe $1, $2, point it at the lens, it'll destroy it. I don't know why nobody would do that.
That's terrible.
Right? What I'm saying is terrible, but that's what's going on. You feel me? But it's really infringing on your rights. Imagine, where do you get privacy?
It's just
it's insane.
It's really just ironic is that
This is what we're going to. We're going into a surveillance state. A lot of people don't see it that way. Okay, we're going into a surveillance state. We're going to have a social credit system soon. Watch what you say on television. Watch what you say on the phone, on social media, because they'll come for you.
don't have privacy, and they like the government want to know everything the fuck we doing, but then they won't let us know nothing they doing. And the things they do probably throw out there, we ain't really too worried about it, at least as a people. All this stuff that been going on, motherfuckers still don't, niggas, they still don't see what it is.
It's crazy how everything is really data, right? Like, we're walking data. We're walking data. Like, really, everything we do, what we watch, what we consume,
cookies,
our attitude, everything is cookies. Like, and they literally just got that shit stored somewhere. And a lot of it, we don't even know why they got it stored, what they using it for. That's what I be tripping on.
It's a mixture of everything we've been seeing, from They Live to the Truman Show to They Clone Tyrone. All that shit is all mixed in one right now. That's what's going on.
Even we talking about the flock cameras, TV and movies will show you before it happened. And I don't know, we was watching Paradise seasons 1 and 2, and they had the bird or whatever it was sitting on top of the stoplight or the camera right there. That was a camera.
The CEO of Flock, if you even try to map where his cameras are in your city, you're a terrorist.
There's an organization called DFlock, who are semi-well known now, I guess, if you're interested in this stuff, who take a fairly aggressive approach in terms of counting the number of cameras and having a Discord channel where they talk about potential, activities to move against Flock and stop it expanding.
And then unfortunately there's terroristic organizations like DFlock, whose primary motivation is chaos. They are closer to Antifa than they are anything else.
This is pretty ironic, coming from the guy who proudly says he's putting hundreds of thousands of cameras across America.
But to your point, we have really 3 broad buckets of technology. We have devices that detect evidence. So, we mentioned a camera that focuses on car. We have cameras that focus on people. We have gunshot detection. That's really like things that capture that evidence. And then we have AI that decodes it. So one of the problems that we create unintentionally is, well, if you have 100 license plate readers, you now have a lot of information. How do you decode that with AI? And so we have a product we call Freeform that allows you to type in English language heuristics, something like, I'm looking for a Ford F-150 from the 1990s with a racing stripe and rust on the front. And we'll find that car. And then we have a third bucket of software and hardware that is really, how do you deliver and respond faster? So we manufacture drones. So when a 911 call comes in, instead of having to wait for an officer to show up, boom, you click a button, the drone is there in 30 seconds, in 45 seconds. And then a handful of software products that also help deliver that same kind of rapid response.
And the time frame on when you think crime will no longer exist?
Well, I think the cool part is that it's really a 2-step evolution. Like, step 1 is you have to solve crime. So if you look at all of the primary research on the topic, so not my opinion, but what academics have studied.
They're not even hiding the surveillance state anymore. They're building it in plain sight. Hell, even the name Flock fits perfectly with Animal Farm, a George Orwell book about a totalitarian state. But it somehow gets even worse. The CEO openly admits that many of his own customers don't even know which type of Flock camera they have.
So we just started doing it and just kind of brute forced through pain and sweat. Our customers have no idea what version of camera they're on. They think they have the Flock camera. We're on version like 4.6 or whatever.
And that's important because these aren't just license plate readers. Some of them can also capture audio and collect digital signals from nearby devices.
This particular device does not have a camera in it. It has a very sensitive microphone connected to AI. It listens for, quote, sounds of distress. The only way it can detect sounds of distress is if it's always listening. And then, what is the threshold for a sound of distress is a matter of policy. When the news segment aired, they showed me sharing my concerns about how this technology is going to be used.
In cities like Atlanta, you're almost always on camera. There's reportedly about 1 camera for every 10 people.
Atlanta has more surveillance cameras per person than anywhere in the U.S.
It's definitely very observable that you are being watched.
On the way here, I think I passed 20 flock cameras. So my car was tracked 20 times just getting here. And the question is, do we really want to be living in this type of community where surveillance is now the answer to public safety?
This is what they want. They're making excuses for your safety, but in reality, they want to enslave you. They don't want you to have any privacy. And instead of focusing on being able to detect crime when it happens, they just want to collect data. That's all they want to do. They want to collect data, harvest your data, your private information, and to sell it. This is what it's about. Anyway, thank you guys for coming on. Please share this information. See you on the next one.